We're going to move on to the third presentation now, also coming from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration from the Office of Coastal Management. We have David Kaiser. So David, over to you.
Eric. So I'm here to talk about the Coastal Zone Management Act, specifically the federal consistency review process and how that works with these offshore wind project proposals. Next slide. Real briefly, I'm the Senior Policy Analyst in the Office for Coastal Management within NOAA's National Ocean Service. I am the lead for federal consistency and many other CZM-related policy issues. Next slide, please. So our office, the Office for Coastal Management, we not only administer the Coastal Zone Management Act, but we also have substantial responsibilities under the Coral Reef Conservation Act, and we have the delegated licensing responsibility for any projects under the Ocean Thermal Energy Conversion Act or the Deep Seabed Hard Minerals Resources Act. We approve the state coastal management programs and changes to those programs, which happen all the time. We award the annual coastal management grants. We evaluate the state programs periodically, and we provide a very wide array of management and technical assistance and tools for coastal managers and other coastal management stakeholders. And this can be geospatial tools, such as the Digital Coast and education services, as well as a whole array of other facilitation, conflict resolution type things. We oversee the federal consistency compliance and the interpretation of NOAA's CZMA consistency regulations. We mediate disputes between states and federal agencies, and we also facilitate negotiations between states and applicants, as we're doing quite often with in the Northeast with the wind farm applicants and the coastal states as they negotiate their Coastal Zone Management Act issues. Next slide, please. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Coastal Zone Management Act, been around for almost 50 years. It encourages the participation of coastal states, which includes Great Lakes and United States territories, to develop a comprehensive coastal management program that is approved by NOAA, but is implemented at the state level. So there are national interest objectives and goals in the CZMA that are embedded in the state coastal programs. And again, with the idea that we are balancing resource protection with economic, recreational, cultural, and other needs. So again, it's a voluntary program. It's not a delegated program, but if a state does participate, it develops a very comprehensive program with policies, legal requirements, and again, we have to then approve that program if it meets our regulatory requirements. Next slide, please. So just real briefly, there are 35 eligible coastal states, Great Lakes states, and U.S. territories. There's only one state that is not participating, that is Alaska. They voluntarily withdrew from the program in 2011. Next slide, please. So this might be the most important message for me today. So the federal consistency provision of the CZMA gives states a unique, and I emphasize unique because I can't think of another federal program that gives states such a powerful review authority for federal actions that can affect state coastal uses or resources. And we call this the federal consistency provision. So again, it is important for the states to understand that this process is the primary means by which a state can address your issues for the review of offshore wind projects. Next slide, please. So this slide is sort of the basic slide, and when we do our 6-hour in-person trainings, and we sort of parse all of this one statement out, but this is what federal consistency is and gives to the states, is that the act requires that all federal actions, there's no exemptions, that may have coastal effects, that is, reasonably foreseeable effects on the uses or resources of a state's coastal zone have to be consistent with the enforceable policies of that state's coastal management program, where we have approved those policies. And it is important to note that it is not effects in the coastal zone. It is effects to uses or resources of the coastal zone. So those uses or resources or those coastal effects can occur outside of the coastal zone. Next slide, please. So just a few high points. CZMA, Congress recognized that by providing states with this federal consistency authority, there may be overlapping and conflicting state and federal interests in the use of state coastal resources and areas of the ocean, areas of the coast. So that is inherent in the CZMA process. It provides that important role for states in the federal decision-making process when there are coastal effects. And while that is a very powerful tool for states, the states review the projects and they either concur with conditions, or they object to the projects, but they're not in the role of regulating or managing the projects. It is also important to note that, again, while it's a very powerful tool, states do not have the last word in the CZMA federal consistency process. It does encourage a lot of early state-federal coordination and cooperation, as we have seen with the offshore wind projects in the Northeast, where there are many issues, mostly related to fishing, but there are other issues. And so with the recognition that the applicants have to go through this process, it does provide that forum for identifying and trying to resolve those issues. And again, has been essential for addressing state issues for the offshore wind farms so far. Next slide, please. So when I say states do not have the last word, well, we have different types of federal actions, but a federal agency activity. So this would be if BOEM were to actually offer a competitive lease sale for offshore wind. In that case, it is BOEM, the federal agency, that makes a determination of coastal effects and which states will get a consistency review. If a state reviews it for CZMA consistency and it objects, the federal agency can proceed over the state's objection if the federal agency determines it is what we call consistent to the maximum extent practicable, which means that there are legal prohibitions to the federal agency complying with the state. There is a presidential exemption available in the statute, but it is an extraordinary remedy. It's only been used once, but it is there and it's available. For the federal permits, so these would be BOEM authorizations to an applicant for its construction and operations plan. If the state has CZMA review and the state objects, then the federal agency, in this case BOEM, cannot authorize the activity, period. Unless that applicant appeals that state objection to the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary overrides the state's objection. And that process is now delegated to the NOAA administrator. Next slide, please. So for activities on the OCS, on the Outer Continental Shelf, as I said, if BOEM holds a lease sale for a renewable energy project, then BOEM determines which coastal state gets CZMA review. For the license or permit phase, so the construction and operations plan, if that applicant applies to BOEM for approval of that project, there may be state review, but state review under the CZMA is not automatic in federal waters in this case. Next slide, please. So if the state wants to have automatic review of an offshore wind project in federal waters, the state must first list that authorization in its coastal program and develop and have a NOAA approved what we call geographic location description, or GLD, in federal waters. This is a geographic area in federal waters. This is different than the Gulf states' reviews of oil and gas plans under the OCSLA. So this step is not needed for the oil and gas plans, but it is for the renewable energy projects. And if a state does not list the authorization for OCSLA renewable energy projects or have that geographic location description, the state can request our approval, the Office for Coastal Management approval, on a case-by-case basis to review a particular construction and operations plan. However, the state does not need our approval if the applicant voluntarily agrees to provide the state with a CZMA federal consistency certification. So for the many projects in the Northeast right now, at least to date, those projects have either been within a state's geographic location description, so the state had automatic review, or the applicant voluntarily agreed to give the state a CZMA review, and there's currently only one pending unlisted activity review request for a project where the applicant is not voluntarily giving one state CZMA review. Next slide, please. And this is just to give you an example. This is one of Rhode Island's approved geographic location descriptions. So the yellow boundary is state waters. The dotted purple line is actually the Rhode Island Special Area Management Plan study area, which they then presented to NOAA for approval as one of their first GLD, first geographic location description for the review of offshore wind projects and other activities. They subsequently have another geographic location description that is south and east of that as well for wind farm project review. So that's a very brief overview of consistency in offshore wind. Next slide, please. This is just where you learn more. We have a consistency website. If you Google NOAA federal consistency, this is what it'll take you right to it. It has the statute, it has the regulations, it has the preambles to our previous 2000 and 2006 rulemakings, which have a lot of information in there about how federal consistency works. There's reference documents there, the state federal consistency lists are there, and there's also information about the appeal process. And with that, I'll turn it back to Eric.